Hello, and welcome to the BigTime Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches from around the nation that are making the big time where they're at. This episode is brought to you by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the leading software for high school and colleges that provide coaches the ability to write programs online, generate more than a dozen reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with code BigTime, you'll receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. This episode is also brought to you by PowerLift. Taking your athletic facility from concept to completion can be a challenge. At PowerLift, it's our goal to make the process as seamless as possible from start to finish. Our weight equipment is made with the toughest material that can withstand excessive use from coaches and athletes. It's sought after for its unique design, customizable appearance, affordability, and our superior warranty that training facilities want and need. Our weight rooms are designed with the athlete in mind, and we pride ourselves in our ability to outfit athletic facilities based on a team's unique goals. That's why high schools, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, and athletic performance facilities around the world have chosen us to help maximize their strength training facilities. Call us today to be contacted with a rep in your area, and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see for yourself why our clients are PowerLift proud. Now let's get to this week's episode. Hey, Coach Weno, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I know it's a lot of fun to connect with you on a podcast. I know we talk back and forth a little bit. Coach Weno is a NHS SCA Fellow Advisory Board member here in Iowa. So getting him on and actually recording one of our conversations is going to be fun. But Coach Weno, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, excited to be here. I listen to this quite a bit, so it's fun to be on this side and get to have one of these chats with you.
Just to start out, to give listeners some background on you, where are you from? How'd you get to where you're at?
Well, I'm originally from Eastern Iowa and grew up in Iowa City, proud City High alum, the Little Hawks. From there, went to Indianola and played football at Simpson College. Got my PE endorsement and licensure there, and substituted for 3 years after that. And that's kind of where I started to sub for PE teachers that taught strength conditioning classes. And I don't know why, but I had never connected the two before. And I started to realize I kind of enjoy this side of PE more than the health or the actual regular PE side of things. During those 3 years, I started to kind of dive deeper into S&C and the X's and O's and the science behind it, to almost kind of play catch up, because I didn't have the structured outside of my kinesiology class. I didn't have any other really sports science classes geared towards that. And then once I got hired in my first teaching job at West Central Valley out in Stewart, Iowa, I was hired to be their PE, health, and strength conditioning coach out there, as well as their boys basketball coach. But one of the main things when I got hired was I had known that they had kind of, struggled a little bit with their athletics and their athletic program, and I really saw an opportunity because they have nice facilities out there and a great setup for a weight room, and I really saw a opportunity to dive into something that I kind of had a passion for with strength conditioning and try to turn around things at that school. And 2 years down the road, we were doing a lot of good things. We had gotten a lot of programs involved in-house. And then a buddy of mine, Mike Gedemy, who was teaching at Centennial, gave me a call, said that they were looking to make a head strength conditioning coach position at the high school, and wanted to know if I was interested. And at that time, and currently, I lived an hour away from West Central Valley. So being able to get a job at a larger school 20 minutes down the road from my house was a huge, huge incentive for me. And so I was fortunate enough, I applied and was chosen to lead the unified program at Centennial. And that was back in 2019. So been doing this for 3 years now and loving every minute of it, and very fortunate for what I get to do.
That's awesome. And it's really cool to be able to oversee a whole unified program. One of the things that you mentioned in there was when you're substitute teaching that you started to see what it looked like for PE to look a little bit different, right? Like for strength and conditioning to be within the PE setting. And I think that's a trend around Iowa. I think it's a trend around the nation. And I think it's cool that you get to experience that firsthand with West Central Valley, and then be able to oversee everything later on in a different position, I think is really cool. So good experiences to put you where you're at right now. What are some of the things that you're just like some go-to learning tools? You said that you were trying to dive into strength and conditioning as much as you could, those number of years back, and tried to catch up on your education because you didn't have it within your physical education classes as much. What were your go-tos? Where'd you learn from, and what are some of the things that you'd recommend to other people?
Well, it's funny you asked, and I'm glad you asked, because I don't know about you, but a lot of times, I feel like I'm not enough. And I don't know if it's my background or just maybe some insecurity that I'm always trying to play catch up in my head to others around me. And whether it's true or not, it has made me a better coach, and I think more receptive to new ideas. So when I really started off, it was kind of who will listen and who will answer, my probably strange or dumb questions that you probably think are obvious at that time. And so I reached out to my old strength coaches, kind of asked them where they thought I should start. Went back to some of my college buddies who went through the sports performance and sports science field and asked them, what's some good resources? And all of them, kind of pointed to the same thing. And they said, read, learn to read and love to read. And I don't know about you, but that was never a thing for me growing up, was reading. I did enjoy it. Every time it was a pain, it was a chore, and it was only because it was an assignment in school that I did it. But I realized that after talking to a lot of these guys of just how much I didn't know that I needed to dive into these materials. So, I went to like the CSCS, used their essentials handbook, volume, I don't know what it is, 8 or whatever, but tried to digest some of that. Then I would go to any local clinics. And the first big clinic I went to was the Mid-America Conference for the NHSSCA up in Minnesota. And I realized when I went there, it was such a welcoming environment. And, I probably now look back on it and kind of laugh, but I was meek, and I kind of sat in the back because I just kind of wanted to sit there and absorb everything I could from all these guys that had done it, for years. And I asked at the end, they had an open panel. I said, what's one of the major tools or resources you use or used when you started to get better? And one of them was, or actually I should say, multiple of them pointed to Joe Ken's coach's playbook that he wrote. And one coach, in fact, in the audience turned around and handed a copy. He had it in his bag. He said, "Here, take a look at this." And I looked at it, and it just made sense. And so I went home that night. I ordered it in my hotel room, got that, and that kind of gave me a basis for everything else that I learned, and kind of a structure, a framework to kind of work around. And then after that, I tried to dive into other materials to get kind of the science behind it a little bit. And then ever since then, it's really just trying to find kind of those larger voices, those bigger mentors out there, whether it's through the, association or through the NSCA or guys that you hear about on Twitter. But I rely heavily on those guys and ask a lot of questions. And I've heard this before, and it's true for me that I'm as good as, the giants around me, because I steal all their good thoughts and I make it my own type thing. And one of the biggest things I remembered was at that same Mid-America Conference, Rob Brokaw, who's out in Nebraska, and you've had him on this program a lot. I identified so thoroughly with him because he had the same non-traditional background where, you know, he didn't go to school for this. He kind of fell into it. You know, I think he what was he, a librarian? I think that's what they said when he won his Coach of the Year award this last year at one time. So listening to him speak and seeing him like he can make it, and he's, you know, at this national conference presenting, it's like, you know, I can do it too. And I just need to, you know, buckle down and try to learn from the best and the greats around me, whether that's through books, articles, or talking to people.
That's awesome. I was at that clinic too. It's a really good one, really solid. I remember Rob's, his was right in Coach Johnson's weight room, and Wyzetta's weight room, and it was really cool. He was talking about just like flow and what it looks like to what it looks like to program well and to be efficient with your time. And I think he does such a great job because he's got a smaller.
It was all about his systems. He was talking about systems, you know, and it was great.
Yeah, like it. Yeah. So one of the things that stood out to me there was the tier system, actually. So I'm talking about systems, the tier system, the strength coaches playbook. And I think that a lot of people start to relate with that really well, because people want structure. They want to have some sort of way that they can start to frame things up in their mind. And that's when it really things started to really click well for me, or I felt like I could answer a lot of questions or solve a lot of problems, was once I found structures that work. And so like from there, once you have those structures, then you can start to be creative. So tell me about your programming now. What's methodologies that look like? Is it, you know, like, are you following some tier method, or is it just started to give you an idea of like how things could be, and now you've kind of made stuff your own, and maybe just some insight of what it looks like at Centennial at the moment, from an overall perspective too.
So yeah, it's funny you say that, because it's so true for me. It was, again, not having the background and rooted in a whole lot of experience. I loved that book because it made me feel like I wasn't missing anything. You know, this is what a well-rounded program should have somewhere within it. And so my first few years at West Central Valley, we really stuck to that, with a few changes as I started to talk to more people and see how maybe we could streamline it, you know, because we all know one of the main things that we don't have is time with our athletes. So you know, the hour and a half to 2 hour session, if you do everything in a row that maybe the book calls for or whatever, just doesn't really work, especially in a high school setting. So it was one of those, you know, in my classes, how do I get, you know, best bang for my buck? When I have my mornings, you know, maybe 45 minutes, how do I do that? So when I was at West Central Valley, we did a lot of 3-day splits, with the Tuesday and Thursday being kind of our speed days. And that's what we organized our way around and did the whole total lower upper split that Joe Ken talked about, and stuck pretty close to that. It wasn't until I came to Centennial and started to feel, like I said, much more comfortable with what we did and had a few years under my belt, that I started to streamline it, I would say, a little bit more. And one of the biggest things that came my way that kind of changed my thinking was learning about APRE from Dr. Mann, and reading his book. And it just that was one thing that made sense to me in my training and experience that I saw. Is I would see that happening anyway with my athletes and in my sessions, with the way that they would go up and down and how you got to build volume before you add weight. I mean, it makes sense, but it was a protocol to follow. Again, another structure for me to help it make sense. So halfway through my first year at Centennial, one of the bigger changes we made was we went to kind of an APRE format for our main lift, and we just keep it at the main lift. The 4 lifts afterwards follow the Joe Ken format of the tier system, with the dynamic effort being the second lift, and then the supplemental or minor major efforts, whatever you want to call it, the supplemental lifts that follow afterwards that fit into his progression. And we still do a 3-day split. And that first year, we did that same Monday, Wednesday, Friday lift, Tuesday, Thursday speed session for about half an hour. And we really we did that and realized after that first year, once our attendance wasn't very good, that something had to change. And especially for us, it was realizing 5 days a week was a lot to ask. At least for us, it seemed like if we could get them here for an hour, 3 days a week, if we could sell that, I think we'd have a lot more people buying into what we're doing. And that's what we transitioned to my second year. So this year and last year, we went to doing a kind of 15 to 20 minute speed session, and then we go right into our lift afterwards. And this was helped out a lot with Brendan Thompson down in Kansas City, who does a lot of good work. And him having kind of a local connection, I had heard of him before and hooked up with him after a clinic, and he kind of helped guide me through the running and the speed school portion of it, because again, that was something that, you know, I had done track 3 years in high school, 4 years in high school, and that was the end of it. I didn't have a how-to or didn't know the X's and O's of it. And so I leaned on him a lot to kind of see how he structured it, along with a few others. But mainly what we do is we do on Monday, when we do our total body, which is a Olympic lift, and we've kind of started to add in hex bar deads, just like a lot of people for our power development. That's our horizontal or our acceleration day for our running. So we work on starts, 10-meter flies are the tests we do every day on that. And that's where we're starting to add in a lot more of our sled work too, that we're introducing kind of these last few months. And then it goes on to Wednesday, which is our lower body day, which is typically our squat, barbell back squat. But then as I've, you know, digested what others do and learned from others, we're starting to introduce a lot of split squat now, thanks to the work of like Cal Dietz and the other like kind of TFC guys that I've, you know, after going to 3 or 4 of those clinics, you know, it's hard to argue with a lot of what he says. So we are integrating a lot of split squat as our main lift. And then with that, on the running side of things, we pair that with our longer distance max velocity day. And that's where we would test our 40, 50, and 60, depending on what phase of the winter or the spring or that we're in. And then it ends with, on the third day is our upper split. And for us, that's bench press, push jerk, chin up, main lift. And then with that is our multi-directional day. So that's where we get our change of direction, our acceleration, re-acceleration, those type of things. And we're starting to introduce a lot more, I would say, unconventional, thinking about Bobby Stroop, after listening to him talk and the things that he's kind of doing to get the body to train in more extreme ranges of motion, so that if it finds itself in that position on the field or on the court, we can hopefully reduce the likelihood of injury as best we can. But that's kind of our main split and how we do things. It's like I said, that during our lift, it's about a half an hour, and we go from our maximal strength, our max effort, and we do kind of at the beginning of a phase, we'll do an APRE 6, APRE 8 strength building phase, and then we'll go right into our power phase. And within those power phases and strength phases, we'll rotate different main lifts in there. And then our second lift is kind of a fun experimental time for me. It's where we do kind of our accommodating resistance and our different grips or our different starting points at a lower intensity, where we jack up and increase that speed. And it's been really fun to experiment. The newest one we added in after seeing a bunch of coaches try it and talk about it was the banded up attachment, where you put the band above the athlete or on the bars or if you have the triphasic arms attached to the barbell, to where at the top, it's not helping at all. But at the bottom, it helps you more and more and more. So it's actually lighter at the top. And it's been really fun. And the kids have reacted the most to those because it's almost like a PR buster. You know, a kid that's been stuck on squat 315 for, you know, a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all of a sudden he puts that banded up on it, and we load 105, 110% of their max. And now they've got 325 up to 345 on the bar. You know, they get kind of, the first time they get kind of doe eyes, you know, those big cotton headlights eyes, thinking like, there's no way this is going to happen. And I just say, you know, we'll be fine. You'll have your spotter, trust them. And at the bottom, that will weigh about 285. It won't be that 325. And the kids do it and they walk away from the rack, you know, with a smile on their face, because they never dreamed that they would do that much weight, you know, and feel that good about it. And then the next week, sure enough, a lot of times we get that PR where they finally hit that 315 or that 320 that they've been stuck at for the last couple of weeks. So we really love that second lift that gives us that dynamic or that kind of change of pace, because it really helps us bust through some of the kids' mental blocks, I should say. And then, like I said, the typical accessory lifts are after that, whether it's upper body to help with technique a lot of times is what we finish out with. And then the 10 seconds of intentional breathing and a little bit of talk about what we saw that day, and the kids are out. So we try to keep it under just a little under an hour 15 is what we try to do. And that's 3 days a week. And it's been working really well for us once we've made that switch.
Sounds awesome. I like having a small dose of everything. One of the things that people have started to really throw around a lot is minimum effective dose. I like exposing people to a lot of different things over and over and over, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, like Bobby Stroop, you said, was talking about like just put them in positions that they might see themselves in. It's like, well, if your practices aren't doing that, if your training isn't doing that, that's really dumb, right? Like, so I love when really big name people say stuff that just makes sense. It's like, yeah, that's the way you should do it. There's a clip out on Twitter right now. I can't remember. It was an NFL wide receiver. Can't remember who was talking, but what he was saying was like, don't ask me for your Instagram drills or what I do for my drills. It's like,
yes, I saw that too.
Do you remember who it was? I can't remember who it was.
I know, just like, but no, it was so true, because I mean, we talk about it, you know, when we see each other, and we, you know, you see it on Twitter, S&C Twitter, I should say, where, you know, they'll tag a video of these guys tap dancing around something, and it's like, that's not what you do. And to hear a player say that, I latched onto that right away too.
Yeah. So basically what the guy was saying, what he finished up with was like, go and run routes, go run full speed routes, catch balls. It's like, it's not that crazy. It's like, that's why I always enjoy seeing stuff from like BBA, Michael. He does an awesome job of just showing like, okay, just put them in a competitive position and take a look at film, see what it looks like there, and try to mimic some of those things in a competitive way. It's like, all right, that sounds easy.
That was one thing that when we came into Centennial, it was at West Central Valley, we had a lot of younger coaches at this small town, kind of straight out of college. They're always willing to try new things, but not a whole lot of experience. And then I went to Centennial, where we've got a lot of established, very successful coaches in their respective sports that have done things for decades in a certain way. And one of those I always think about is the conditioning. And just along those lines, you know, I would sit there and I would ask them like, okay, like you guys watch film, and I'll do this from like a football perspective. You guys watch film. How long does that play last? You know, how far did they go? And how many times are they going to do that in a game? Okay, so then, and why are we doing all this, you know, run over there, run in a circle and then come back? Okay, run over to that trash can over there and run back, run to that fence post. And I'm like, that's just so indiscriminate. And it's taken a little bit to kind of, it's like, it's a large ship, a lot of these programs in these larger schools. And so I'm just trying to steer them and change the rudder direction just slightly so that we can get them where we want to be eventually. And it's taken a while, because at first I'd get kind of strange looks, and they're like, well, it's worked, we're winning, why change it? And it's like, well, because there's a better way out there. Just think about it. And, the whole adage of, they don't have to walk out of here with their tongues hanging out of their mouth in order to have a good workout or to be a good session. Let's target what we're doing. And so, yeah, along those lines, totally. That's one of the main things that when I came in, I noticed that, especially with like the conditioning, was that let's do what they do in their sport. Let's get them good at that, and let's simplify it and boil it down to this and get rid of the fluff.
It was Devontae Adams. So yeah, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Right? Let's go do what he's talking about. Yeah. But yeah, what you're talking about with conditioning, those type of things, it's just like that's what I really like. I really like just figuring out, okay, where do we want to go? What are the things that we need for that to happen? And then just like plan those things out and make it as fun as possible for kids, right?
Exactly.
One of the things that you wanted to talk about was large group speed training and maybe timing and stuff like that. And it sounds like we kind of got the background of what your setup looks like as far as like structure of when kids are coming in and that type of stuff. Just so listeners know, you're at one of the larger schools in Iowa. So, there's a lot of athletes to work with. Maybe some feedback on how you get all that done would be awesome.
Yeah, it's something that, it's been a huge learning curve and learning process for me. Because like I said, my background, I dove in first into the strength and conditioning, how to put together a good workout type of thing. And then I realized that, there's way more to athletic development, and especially for kids nowadays is, we got to get them, to improve in their speed and their agility as much as we can. And the whole adage of, you can't coach speed, it's like, well, that's true to an extent, but like, I can't just, if a kid walks in here, I can't just say, hey, sorry, buddy, there's nothing I can do. Let's go squat. I gotta help him a little bit, and I can improve things here and there. And then it just became a necessity with how large our groups were when we had, I got a football team that loves to train together, and there's 70 to 80 guys in their group. Well, it's great to have a speed program when you got 5 people. You can put in your rest, you can program all these drills in one time. But when you got 70 kids and you're rolling through, and like I said, we try to do it under 20 minutes. That is a lot to get done. And that's where, again, you got to boil it down to what's important, what are you trying to get done, and find a system that works for you. And it was not pretty to begin with. When I started to try to introduce, we were using a Brower timer, and the Brower timer I love because it was great initially, because the kids would run these times and they'd been hand timed their entire career at Centennial, because that's what they were doing before I got there. And here I put up a laser timer, and we're doing it every day. And they look at me and they'd be like, oh, I don't run that. And it's like, you're arguing with a laser. Like, it's not me anymore. It's not my thumb. But I loved the result because the kids got competitive. But here, if I tried to do a 10-meter fly, 30-meter fly, a 40-yard dash with 70 guys, I'd be spending 20 minutes with the Brower timer just sitting there. So we had to then develop, station work to try to get that done. And that worked okay. And then it really evolved into, once I went to one of the TFC clinics and I saw about the free lap timers and saw the ability of those to where that you could have multiple people running through, as long as you had the number of chips to use them, that I thought, okay, let's dive into this. And then we got that about 2 years ago. And ever since then, we're really experimenting with it. And the biggest thing I can say for free lap is to use the coaches around you. Don't be afraid to ask. That's how I learned, and that's how I ironed out a lot of kinks with it. Because when I went from Brower, I knew once I had Brower set up, it was good. you don't question it. The laser is the laser. With Freelap, if you've used it enough, you know that sometimes that those times can be hot, and you just got to tell them to rerun. Or if your distances are off, if you don't set it up quite right, it can be a problem. And it's just through trial and error. And for us, though, the ability to roll through 70 athletes, 20 athletes, 30 athletes, and time them every time they're in with me is enough for me to work through the problems. And so right now, the system we have that we use just got updated a couple months ago. Before, I kind of followed Coach Meyer out of Farmington and his kind of model that he's put out on Twitter and on his social media, where if you guys have ever used Freelap, it's a chip-based system that you put on your belt, and the kids run through past the cones, and you put as many cones out and as far out as you want for whatever you're measuring. And the problem with that was just how do you assign or get through that many athletes and know who's who and who's what's time? Because for us, I don't have 70 chips, because each one of those chips are pretty expensive. And so I'm fortunate enough that my middle school PE teacher happened to be also our track coach. So him and I went in on it, and we were able to order 20 chips. So that's substantial for a lot of high schools to do. But I know a lot of high schools that do this similar system, with many less chips, and it still works. And the main thing is the kids have to know the last 2 digits of their chip. And when they run through, for us, we have the PE department had an old flat screen plasma TV that they don't use anymore, that I hooked up to an iPad that would have the Freelap app on it. And I have it up, and the kids run through and they walk over and they check the last 2 digits, and that's how they see their time. And on their walk back, they pull up their phones and they enter in every one of their times into our app that we use, which is Coach Me Plus right now. And it's been phenomenal. And I know that I used to be a control freak, and I would read off the times and then I would enter them in individually, but that just took too much time for 70 kids. So this sped things up immensely. But the newest thing that I did that was came out of, again, another conversation with Brendan Thompson, was the value of splits within your running, and not wanting to miss out on a potential PR on a 40-yard dash, because it's when they those first 10 yards, they might PR that day, but I wasn't timing the 10-yard dash. I was doing the 40. So the importance of having cones in between for us to be able to track that and to keep that data and use it. And I don't know about you, but I don't, I'm up before and after school coach. And I work during the day. I can't enter in split times for 70 athletes on a 40-yard dash. That just wasn't going to work. Maybe in a private sector where you got 5 athletes, you can do that. But for me, that just wasn't going to work. But I knew, talking through to Brendan, how valuable that could be. Also, just how impactful it is for teaching. If you see in a 40-yard dash and you've got every split every 10 yards, you can learn where the kids struggle and where they're doing well. And one of those things I learned right away was for us at our school, there was no point in doing a 60-yard dash, because the kids were tired the last 20 yards and they were just losing some feet. And I didn't know that until we started doing splits. But I didn't record them. I just knew then, let's drop it down and just do 50 yards at the farthest for us. But now what I do is I have a Google Doc with a QR code on it, and the form generates a drop down with every athlete in our program's name. So they walk into the weight room, they weigh in, they scan the QR code, and they select their name, and it instantly goes to a spreadsheet or a CSV file. Once, about 4 o'clock, while they're going through their warm up, which takes about 5 minutes, I pull out that CSV, download it to my computer, and I upload it to my free lap into a group or the roster page under the session that we're in. And what that allows me to do then is the kids that are there don't have to pay attention to their chip number, and they get every information so that when I export all that data out, it gets all the splits, all the times. And we're lucky with our Coach Me Plus that they're able to navigate that and enter it so that we can have it into an organized chart on our app for our data keeping purposes. But it's been a really big change, because I know a lot talking to other coaches that use FreeLap, that one of the biggest problems is, how do you run that many athletes through? How do you keep track of their times if you don't have a lot of chips? And then the team roster feature has always been there, but for a lot of programs, the same kids aren't there every day. And so it causes a problem when you have a roster and the next person up, Jimmy isn't there and Joe's right behind him waiting to go. Well, if Joe runs, his time goes under Jimmy's page. And so when you export it, your data's all off. And so doing this for me allows me to get all that data. It has an updated team roster. And now is the only problem I have now is sifting through a mountain of split times and make sense of it and start using that. So that's the next hurdle I've got now. But it's being able to do that little QR code thing and integrating that has been a big game changer for us, or will be, I believe, in the data that we can collect for our kids with that free lap.
That's a great overview for coaches. I think that's an awesome way to set up a large group. And I really like your Google form, your QR code that comes to the form and then does the drop down. I love it. That's basically how we do our data entry. I don't do the download and upload to FreeLap just because we don't use FreeLap anymore, but it makes sense to me. Total sense. That's awesome. The cool thing, I was just thinking through, you're like, oh, why waste a run, where it could have been a PR and a 10-yard dash, even if it wasn't on a 40. And it's like, well, you could do your 10-yard dash, your flying 10, and your 40-yard dash all in one run. It's like, okay.
Yep. Bang, one shot, you got everything.
Yeah. I like that. I also don't mind just focusing on one thing at a time too. So I have to figure out if I'm good enough to be able to just like see, take all that data and split it out and be efficient with it. I don't know. Sometimes.
No, for me, it's one of those, we still will do like on a Monday, we'll do that 10, those is our fly day. And our progression is we go 10, 20, 30 through our week.
Yeah.
And so and then that's when I said before, on Wednesday, when we do the max velocity longer distance stuff, we do our, the 40 and the 50. And I got crazy one time and I was like, let's try the 60. Let's see about that. And that's when I said, looking at those split times, I realized, there's no point in doing this. They're dog tired for here. So let's just drop it back to the 50. But no, with being able to have that data the way it is now, that door is open to me. But like you said, I don't know if I want to walk into that door and complicate things.
Okay, Coach, this is the namesake of the show. And one of the questions that we try to ask all of our interviewees is, how do you make the big time where you're at?
For me, I've tried to reflect on this a little bit, and especially we kind of talked about this with my background. I struggle with this more so, and it's not as it's more my mental game or how I think about things and approach things, mainly because I didn't have the strong background that a lot of other coaches had. So I do what everybody does nowadays on social media. They compare themselves, and I fell into the trap of looking at all these other programs, these other great coaches, all their athletes that look, they're studs, they're doing a great job, and what they have and what they're doing, their facilities. And I sit there and I'm like, when I was at West Central Valley, it was like, well, look at what we don't have is what I was doing. And then when I'm at Centennial, it's like, again, look at who's not here. Look at who's not training with us, or who's, stuff we don't have, or more toys that I want to bring in. And what I've come to learn through a lot of reflection and reading is that it's all under my control. And it's really my mental game and the way I think about it is how I try to make the big time where I'm at. And it's really reframing your brain about the challenges that you have, and not having like rose-colored glasses where you sit there and think, oh, everything is great, everything is awesome, as the Lego movie would say, or whatever that my kids watch. But it's more of, no, this is ours. This is our, greasy, grimy, rusty weight room, or this is, we're here together. This is our stuff, our equipment. We're going to create the environment we want, and it's going to be ours, our big time strength program. And when I was at West Central Valley, it was one of those, we had to make plywood landmine machines. And I had to go to Menards to pick out the parts for that. Instead of being able to buy it, and order it, a nice shiny one from Rogue or whoever, we didn't have the money for that. So instead of getting frustrated and thinking about the things we couldn't do, no, it was just, what can we do? Well, we've got a, Menards down the street. What can we do with that? And now that I'm at Ankeny Centennial, yeah, our budget's probably a lot bigger, and we're able to afford a lot more because of the hard work and support that our district has, or the people that care about our district. It's more of now, okay, let's put this work in. Let's do this. Let's make it big time. Now we're competing with the big boys. Now we're competing with the people that you see out there, But even saying that, we're still running in hallways, because we have one gym. So we're still doing 40s and all of our speed training in hallways in the winter because we can't go out in snow and on the track. So, even things like that at a school where it seems like we have everything, there's still problems. And I can still, if I choose to, go and complain and compare myself. But in order to enjoy where I'm at and love where I'm at and own it, I've really learned to, you gotta control yourself, and you gotta control your mind and the way you perceive it. And just because we run in that hallway, you're darn right we run that hallway. And that's a source of pride. We don't have the indoor turf field. We don't have all the amenities, but we're still gonna do it. And that's why it's gonna be great, because we go beyond and we work through all these problems that we might have. And so if we just change the way we think about things and refrain and stop necessarily comparing and complaining to what others are doing.
Good stuff, man. What about, what are some ways that people can get a hold of you, that they can contact you and just reach out about some of the topics that we've talked about today?
Yeah, so my email is gweno236@gmail.com. And you can email me anytime. That's how I get in contact with a lot of coaches. But more than likely, the easier way is to get a hold of me on Twitter, and I'm at Coach G Weno there. So nice and easy, at Coach G Weno. And that's how I've communicated with a lot of our coaches in our association.
That's awesome. We will we'll put both of those in the show notes. Coach, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always fun to talk with you. It's always cool to see the direction that you're taking your program, and I'm excited for things here in the future here in the state of Iowa. We get to host the Mid-America Regional this year, and Coach Weno is helping out with that, along with 13 other Iowa high school coaches that are just super excited to show the Midwest what we're about and help move the profession forward. So thanks, Coach. You're the man.
Yeah, no problem. We're from one proud Iowan to another. No, I love the opportunity to speak about what we're doing, and yeah, looking forward to that regional, because I think we're going to come up with a pretty good clinic for everybody to attend.
Yes, maybe we'll call it BigTime.
Yeah, there you go.